Hey, everybody, welcome to the Recoop. I'm Cooper Daniels, and I'm a guy that knows a little about a lot. And today I am here with W. Sean Ford. He is the new CEO of Algorand, Inc., and I'm very excited to have you on. Thanks for joining me, Sean.
Thanks, Cooper. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So is the W William, by the way?
It is William.
It is William.
Yes.
You Williams, you love the W.
Love the William. Well, yeah. So I'm the third of five Williams, but no one goes by William. They all go by middle names in my family for some reason, and they're all different. So it's a
really, yeah. There's I'm the only non-William actually in my family, to be honest. But the middle name is Chester, which I feel like that's probably the reason why nobody goes by that.
Went with it. Nope. It's like George Foreman. All his kids are George Foreman. It's the same.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah. So, all right. So, okay, why don't we just dive right in? You know, I think most of my audience knows who you are and probably a little bit about your journey, but maybe there's some people out there that don't. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your history and how you landed at Algorand?
Yeah, sure. So I've been at Algorand for about 4.5 years, and my whole sort of professional career was a mix of really two things. One was strategy consulting for 7 to 8 years, doing that right out of undergrad and through business school. But then it became a tech career where it's been multiple startups, founded a couple of companies, worked at scale, went through a bunch of acquisitions. But always around tech in various roles: chief operating officer, marketing officer, acquisitions, e-com. And the last company I was at was a company called LogMe, and it's now called GoTo. And I was sort of wrapping up my time there and was looking for the next thing. And the reason it's a little bit relevant to mention that company is it was a product. There was a lot of time spent there thinking about IoT. That was the IoT era where everyone thought it was going to be great because IBM did a commercial about it. And it was really just big data and driving insights from big data, not unimportant, but not really the next big thing. And I got to see that firsthand and thought, well, what is the next big thing? And it just struck me that, I've been involved in Bitcoin and looking at, cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and thought if someone could make these more performant, like that could be the next thing. And as fate would have it, I got introduced to Steve Kokinos, who was a former CEO. And ironically, we'd been in Boston our whole lives and had never met, but we hit it off. And he had just connected up with Silvio Micali, who is the Turing Award winner. Obviously, people know that, and the founder of Algorand. And once I got to know the tech a bit and the team and the background, and obviously met Silvio, it struck me that it just confirmed that, to me, blockchain was going to be, or had the potential to be, the right blockchain to be the next sort of infrastructure for financial exchange. So I jumped on early, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, early, 4.5 years. I mean, that is very early, right? I mean, how long were they at it before you even got there?
Months. I mean, I take that back. Silvio and some of the original the original contributors to the technical paper had known each other for quite some time and had been thinking about it for a bit of time. But in terms of the company itself, really starting in months, it was late 2017 timeframe, and really early 2018 was really when things started to get some traction. Cool. So it was pretty close to the beginning.
Yeah. And so, okay, you mentioned Steve Kokinos as the CEO, and recently you have just replaced him as the new CEO, correct?
Yeah. And, Steve, yes, correct. So, I mean, I've stepped in. I was asked a question before about, how's the transition been? And I think the short answer is I have the luxury of having been here for a long time. And it's been a pretty seamless step. Although, the breadth of conversations and the variety of conversations is a bit wider than it was before. But, relationship with Silvio and the team and with Steve, it's great. And so I feel like it's a fun new chapter.
Yeah. Your Twitter bio, it says CEO, so I guess that's interim CEO. It sounds like you work did Apple acquire,
No,
Algorand?
I'm trying out that as branding. And my comment to everyone that asked about it was, isn't every CEO an interim CEO? I mean, at the end of the day, you're just following the last person and you're before the next person. It's just a question of how long that is. So I intend to be here for a while, and I'm pretty happy with how things are going.
Absolutely. So, I mean, and I'm noticing that I think everybody's noticing there is a bit of a shakeup happening at Inc. You are now the CEO. Kelly left for Arrington. I think you were also pretty close with Kelly, correct? Because she has been there forever.
So Kelly will hate this, but I always say we've worked together for 3 decades, and she goes, "Well, I'm not that old," and that's true. But mathematically, we met in the late 2000s, and then we worked again together in the 2010 to 2020, and obviously at Algorand late 2020 to now, or late 2010s to now. So Kelly's great. I think we are incredibly close to her as a company, and I think she's fantastic, and I think she's going to do great things at Arrington.
Cool. And I guess my last question about the inner workings of Inc. is, how closely do you work with Silvio? How hands-on is he with the operations at Inc.?
Yeah, well, operations at Inc. I would say that the answer to the first part of the question is incredibly closely. Yeah. I mean, we speak. I don't even keep track of the number of times we talk every day. So it's very, very active. He is deeply involved, very aware of the business, brilliant, man, and so one of the things I've said publicly a number of times is there are people that paid a lot of money to go to MIT and learn from Silvio, and I get to do that every day, and it's my job. So I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah. It is so incredible. I mean, just listening to that guy speak, and the amount of people that are in the ecosystem, in DeFi, in the Discords with me that came to Algorand because of Silvio's interview with Lex Friedman. It is like amazing. That single interview was a very effective marketing tool. That's for sure.
Yes, it was great.
All right, cool. And actually, speaking of marketing, you also, in your history, going through your LinkedIn and everything, is that's something that you have been, you've worked on in the past at previous companies. I mean, that's not your focus here, but I was on Twitter just recently, and there's a guy from crypto Twitter. He's pretty, he's an established enough guy, David
Gochstein.
Thank you. And he tweeted, if Algorand had better branding and marketing, it'd be, a top 5 cryptocurrency right now, today. That's what he was saying, and he tweeted that today. What's your opinion? What's your take on that? I
think his tweet was that Algorand needs better branding. And then he said, marketing is key. I don't think he predicted where we would end up. I think, so I would split this in 2 ways, because one is, let's talk about marketing in the blockchain crypto space. A lot of people will talk about marketing as, hype and, flash, and there's a lot of ways that in new industries that people can generate, quote, marketing to appeal to the sort of broader participants in those industries. A dumb example would be, look at old ads for the gold rush. Look at old ads for, look at the ads in the early days of the internet. There's a lot of people that have no trouble with sensationalism and where facts should not get in the way of a good story. And it's especially acute in new spaces, as marketing, sadly, can be used to cover flaws. And I mean, you could see that in established industries too. There's very large tech companies who because they have the heft, can say that, our product does that. And then it doesn't, but they, try to build it, and they use the brand to kind of, as a salve to soothe all wounds. And the reason I use that is that in the space we're in right now, I think it's evolving towards a place where the real players are going to start to be separated from the pretenders. And tech is certainly one way that's going to happen, technical issues. But the other way is that you can only keep aloft a narrative for so long. It becomes exhausting if it's disconnected disproportionately from the facts. Marketing can always stay a little bit ahead. So why am I giving you that context, which people may find a bit pedantic? But the context there is that I think one, I think anyone could do better in the marketing front. Algorand has always said that we're focusing on the tech, and we think that the tech ultimately, along with good partnerships and just good execution and taking a long-term view of what value creation means, those types of things done well will put you in a position to not just survive but thrive in the future. And so that's the angle we've taken. It's to promote the partners, to not overstate, to be very factual in our approach. And we do almost no pure label slapping. We don't throw our name up on an arena and hope. And by the way, maybe that's not the right strategy, and people could always argue you should. But at the end of the day, we've said, look, all of our partnerships need to be based and grounded in technical execution and partners with people that are interested in being on the cutting edge of innovation and tech. So my take on marketing is that marketing and how it's done is going to evolve along with the tech. There's going to be less of a gap between the noise and the signal. And over time, and I would think with a number of the partnerships that we've engaged in, including most recently FIFA as an example, we're going to step into our own and redefine how marketing should be thought about in an industry that's really now beyond its infancy. It should be moving into young adulthood in terms of cool, hip young adults, but young adults nonetheless, where we're looking for real value and substance. And I think the marketing approach should reflect that. Got it.
So you're saying that there's no future Algorand phone. Is that what you're saying? There's going to be no Algo phone?
No, I don't. We've decided to go into wind farms. That's not true, by the way. That's not true.
That's not true. No wind farms.
No wind farms. We are sticking to the tech development and really building great partnerships with companies in our ecosystem.
Right. Well, as somebody that kind of entered into the space, I mean, obviously through Bitcoin and Ethereum at the beginning, and then really trying to find something that made sense to me with maybe a little more of a conservative mindset towards the space. It was the tech that brought me in too. So I think that there's a lot of people, but then once you get here and you're upset about the price, and then you see like some other thing pump, it's like, oh, the market, and then people start to pile on like they need to brand this better or something. But
yeah, it's funny. I mean, I would also say that, I hear that. And I think, we did the Times Square, Times Square takeover was done and the foundation was involved with that. And I think we're able to make better decisions about how we want to start to expand on our brand and the awareness than if we had just pushed, brand label money into the broader economy and just hoped people would be aware of us. I'm willing to hear criticism of the approach. I mean, that's fine, but it was an intentional decision for a number of reasons that we took to focus on the tech and really work the long game.
Well, right. And then the Times Square takeover is emphasizing the environmental friendliness of Algorand, which is absolutely critical to institutional adoption. And then, Algorand showing up in different stadiums, not on the outside of the stadium, but inside the stadium. It seems like, clearly you mentioned FIFA, that Algorand's also connected Gotham FC and, the boats and, there's a lot with Algorand in sports as well. So I think that this is, go ahead.
No, there is. You're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, speaking of FIFA, I imagine that there are things coming soon that you're not going to be able to tell me, and I understand that. But first, why don't we just kind of rewind that for a second and say, how did FIFA actually land, as Algorand as their digital asset partner? How did that? What's that?
Yeah, story? Great. And I want to make one comment on the previous statement. I would say that all of the partnerships that you mentioned, the branding partnerships, have a technical component to them. So that's ties to FIFA. So again, like they're great examples. DRL is another example. These are technical partnerships that also have the sponsorship. And so again, that's been our approach. So FIFA, it's interesting. FIFA, several things came to bear with FIFA. FIFA did an exhaustive review of blockchain technologies. They, we were fortunate enough to be included in that review. And then as part of the consideration and process that was put in place, they looked at which partner they felt like, given their priorities, both for technical development, fan engagement, all of those things, gave them the most, flexibility, optionality, and confidence in successful execution. And at the end of the day, I think that as a result of that evaluation, and we were chosen, we entered into, a formal longer-term technical partnership with FIFA. And oh, by the way, there's a World Cup year, so we're involved there as well, which is interesting and amazing. And I'm a big football fan, and so I'm excited about that. But it came through that sort of evaluative process. And then, of course, having Silvio as your founder, and being so well known over in Europe and in Italy in particular, that didn't hurt. No. And I think a number of those things came together, and we were fortunate enough to be able to partner with them.
Real quick on a side note, and I'm going to continue. Did Italy even qualify for the World Cup?
No, sadly they did not. They lost. I think they lost to Portugal, if I'm remembering it correctly, in a playoff. And they did, ironically, though, win the Euros. So they won the European Championships, and then they qualify. It's a bit of a sore point, as you can imagine, inside the halls of Algorand.
Yeah, and I don't think they qualified last World Cup either. Is this
I think they did last week.
Oh, they did. Okay. So this, maybe I'm just remembering this. Yeah. So you're gonna have to root for the U.S., right?
I always root for the U.S. U.S. is. I feel pretty good about the U.S. and they got a great draw this year, so it's going to be politically very interesting draw. I mean, you've got England, Iran, and Wales, so that's a cool group.
That is a cool group. And we got that guy that's actually successful in the Premier League. What's his name? Christian
Pulisic with Chelsea. Pulisic. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you testing me, Cooper? Are you testing me? Ask me another question about football. I think I'm doing.
You're like, I'm ready.
These are
I know. That's all I know.
I follow Arsenal, just for what it's worth as well. That's the other.
You follow Arsenal? All right. So when Algorand all over Arsenal, what's going on? Why so slow?
Why? As soon as they want to implement some technical products, we're going to be right there for them.
Well, see, this is what I was so excited about when I heard about FIFA. Of course, it's exciting because FIFA, they've got the largest video game out there, really, which that contract ended. That's not for this conversation, I guess. But it's just, it was a huge deal, and even just a sponsorship deal would be cool. But then you dive in and you say, well, no, Algorand's actually part of this deal is handling the digital assets. And you said it's a long-term partnership, correct?
Yeah, it's a long-term partnership. And I wouldn't say digital assets. There's a number of, certainly it's a long-term technical partnership. And There's a bunch of priorities that they have, FIFA has. And one of the things they've said publicly is they want, they love transparency. They want more transparency. They want more fan engagement. They want to evolve the brand. And I'm not speaking for them, but I think these are things that have been communicated by Gianni Infantino, and I think it resonated nicely with what we talk about in terms of our tech. So we're excited about a lot of different things that we have the potential to do with them.
Yeah. Do you mind kind of expanding a little bit on what maybe you think are potential things you could do? Or I'm trying to be sneaky here.
I know. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just deflect only because I would just say there's some. I get asked this question. I'll rephrase it. How often are you engaging with FIFA to discuss these things? And I would say we are, as an organization, almost daily in connection with them on a number of different ideas. And that's we're excited, but I'm just not going to go into what or when because
no what or when. I guess the last question I'll ask you about FIFA is, so from what I'm hearing now is that the World Cup this year is kind of the first step of this partnership of you and FIFA, or Algorand and FIFA.
Well, I think the way I would think about it is the World Cup is obviously it's a critical milestone for FIFA, right? It's every 4 years, and And so, and then there's the Women's World Cup, that follows after that, which is also a big event for them. But
Right.
this event is obviously very important, and it's not really like we've started the first steps. I think.
Yeah.
It's just a milestone on the journey, is how I would frame it.
Got it. And then the flagship Algorand event, the second annual Decipher. Decipher is in Dubai at the same time as the World Cup in Qatar. Is it Qatar? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Qatar or Qatar, depending on where you're from. Sure.
Okay, sure. So both of those are right. I had somebody correct me and say Qatar. That's why I did that. Yeah. So that's at the same time. Are you planning on attending Decipher in Dubai?
Yes, I will be there. I'm going to be speaking, and we have, and I'll also be going to some of the World Cup matches, which will be great.
Yeah. Are you going to actually take the trip to be there live or?
Live. Because it overlaps. So the Decipher is December 28th to the 30th or something or November 28th to the 30th, which is right in the middle of the World Cup. And so it's a quick puddle jumper over to Qatar when you're in Dubai.
Yeah.
It's probably not a puddle jumper, but it's an hour and a half, 2-hour flight. Not too bad.
Oh, so that's real close. That's an exciting, the end of November, early December, this is an exciting time for Algorand, right? This just, it feels like an exciting time.
It is.
Yeah, it is. So, all right. What about, okay. So there's also another sentiment out there that maybe I'll ask you about. And it's basically the idea is like, look, great tech doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the only thing that really matters is that a killer app, an app that people just have to use. Like you have great tech, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, what's the app? What do you say to that?
I would say the tech doesn't matter till it does.
Yeah.
So if you're a financial institution that is sending digital assets to your partners, companies, or you have retail customers who are sending digital assets to one another, and they don't arrive, the system goes down for 24 hours. You do great damage regardless of your app. You just follow Twitter for products that have stopped working. I do remember there was a moment, and it may have been 18 months ago, and this isn't a knock on anything, but there was a couple of data centers with AWS that I think had some problems in the Northeast. And if you remember, there were a lot of problems where, companies that were relying on those data centers while, AWS got them back going, they had a lot. The influx of calls and feedback was not great, and it undermines confidence. So I would say that the tech doesn't matter till it does. And if you have great tech and you have people that want to build on tech that they don't want to compromise and have it somehow undermine their business model, you start attracting more developers, you start attracting more people who develop killer apps. So I would say we want our tech and the way we are accessible to people to be such that we have a higher proportion of the next generation of great innovators deciding to come build on us, and therefore a disproportionate number of killer apps. So I think it's a hand in glove thing. I don't think it's one or the other.
Right. Yeah. I talked to Fractal Monsters. They're making a play to earn game on Algorand right now. It's really a really attractive game. And I asked him a similar question. He goes, well, we couldn't build the game on a lot of these other blockchains. It's just like we need to feed our monster an apple. It can't take 8 minutes for the monster to, eat the apple or whatever. Or a few minutes even, or
That's
even,
correct.
or
that the monster starts eating the apple and then it freezes and then then the whole game's over. Starts.
Yeah, that's not fun either. Who wants to do that?
No, that does not sound like a killer app.
That does not sound like a killer app. That's funny. Okay, so speaking of tech, there's a lot of exciting tech upgrades coming, right? We've been hearing about them. State proofs, I think. We're seeing that be released any moment, or has it happened? Or that's going to be.
I would say,
go check Twitter. Yeah, okay.
I'm excited.
All right, and then and we all know what that can do for interoperability. Maybe we don't all know. So, what are you so excited about with state proofs?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, state proofs, it's a few things. It is the beginning of, I think you said, interoperability in a new way.
Yeah.
State proofs are, compatible and could be adaptable with any other chain. You don't have to hardwire anything in to build sort of, traditional bridges. They use, zero knowledge snarks, which essentially reduces the signature or the contract that's required in order to verify a transaction is legitimate from one chain to the next. So you keep it small in terms of the data and the footprint. You keep the fees lower if you're interacting with a chain where there's fees. So it just really removes a bunch of barriers to being able to exchange and remove friction that exists in the systems today. And I think by having this more decentralized view of how people can go from one economic protocol to another, I think it's really what you've seen in the evolution of other vibrant economies. Very few economies that put a wall around themselves and don't, work with others, they usually suffer. And the people in that economy suffer. And we certainly want to be more of the public, permissionless, open, inclusive, and non-friction laden protocol. And so I see state proofs as being a first step, a real meaningful step, not a first step, but a substantive step towards that. I know that there's a lot of, I'll just address it directly with you, Cooper, but there's a lot of people that are like, hey, this was said and this was supposed to happen, and where is it? And even including, TPS and performance. And I think it's a fair question. There's one of the things that we've again decided, coming back to my comment up front, was we want to make sure the tech is going to do what it says and continue our run at this point of zero downtime since the moment we launched, because that's how we built it. And so I think sometimes things are planned and then there's other priorities, and sometimes they take a little longer to get them right. But I would say I'm very excited about a number of the things that we have coming out very shortly.
Yeah, I spoke with John Woods, the new CTO over at the foundation recently, and he was fantastic, by the way. And he also made the point that he's like, well, currently when we're talking about TPS, Algorand can handle all the transactions it needs to handle. So the rush, you want to get these things right, and there's no need to have 25,000 transactions per second at the moment.
Well, and by the way, on this one, this is one of my stump speeches, but I'll give you the short version of it, is that, I think we need to hold people in the community and people, not saying Algorand, but in the blockchain community, to a bit of a higher standard if you want to talk about marketing hype. Right. A transaction is not a transaction is not a transaction. You can send microscopic, minimal data transactions to anyone, anywhere at a high rate of speed, and say you do 60,000 transactions per second. Okay, but then when you put smart contracts in, or you actually do real transactions, it slows things down dramatically for people that tend to like those numbers. There's also transaction finality, which is, is it something that is final, or does it take a while to settle, or do you have to go back in time to verify it? And if you have downtime, does that factor into your calculation on transactions per second? Because it should. If you're a baseball player and you don't get a hit for 30 straight games, your average goes down. You don't get to restart your average, back where it was. So I feel like there's a lot of TPS. To me, is one of the great marketing ploys, and is used to drive excitement without necessarily being rigorous around the definition and how you look holistically on security, decentralization, finality, to determine what that actually is for people. And I think it's done as a marketing tool. And to your point, when we go to 6,000, that's more than anyone. I mean, we're not stopping, but it's pretty good volume. And especially if it's smart contracts and it's any type of transaction at that same speed.
Absolutely. And, speaking of TPS as a marketing tool, another one that people like to use is TVL. And I think that that's another one that is pretty easily manipulated. That one's an easily, I mean, we see it in the news these days. I keep on throwing shade at a certain project, but right. I mean, yeah.
Well, the thing that I mean, again, you can take a certain, culturally, you can take decisions, you can make easy decisions or you can make tough decisions, and you can, play the long game. But I always say TPS in particular, it's like, look, I could make, if someone shot me out of a cannon, I could go 100 miles an hour, but I'd probably hit a wall. That's not what I want to have at the end of it, right? So at the end of the day, you can make, statistics and numbers are unfortunately manipulatable.
All right. Okay. And, speaking of John Woods, he is coming over from Cardano. And I know that you've spent a lot of time in Wyoming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but do I remember, and I've looked for this picture and I couldn't find it. Have I ever seen you on a horse next to Charles Hoskinson? Does that picture exist?
Well, no.
No, it doesn't. Okay.
You're conflating, but yeah. Okay. So I spend a bunch of time in Wyoming, and we love it. And Charles is also in Wyoming. He's in a different part, and there was an exchange of pictures on Twitter between me and Charles. Charles, I don't remember if he was standing with a horse or on a horse, but then I tweeted out my picture. And I would say, look, I have a lot of respect for Charles. He's been nothing but supportive of Algorand, and I find him to be just a really good guy. So it's nice to have bonded over one of the 50 states and I say bonded loosely, like connected on at least a very minor way.
Right. And and this was a while ago, and I remember people seeing that exchange and being like, oh, is there something here? Is Algorand talking to, and then I was talking to John, and he's like, well, yeah, there could be, state proofs, and they already use VRF over at Cardano. So clearly Charles has shown an admiration for Silvio and Algorand, and which, it says something about him. He doesn't have to do that. He could be competitive.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, cool. Or how do you see this? Let me ask this question. So the future is probably multi-chain, correct? I mean, is that where?
Sure. That's a safe bet.
That's a safe bet, right? So, you're newly appointed to be the CEO. I'm sure part of getting a job like that, even though you've been there from the beginning and it's an easy transition, one of the first steps or one of the first thoughts has got to be like, how do I take this thing to the next level, right? Like, how do I help? What can I do to help this escalate a bit? Now, in a future multi-chain world, where do you see Algorand situated in that? And, how do you personally, what are the thoughts in your head personally about kind of taking Algorand to that next level?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So at a high level, I think one of the blessings and the curses of being, public, permissionless, and, very efficient and with low fees is that you attract a lot of interest from a lot of different sectors, and it's very easy, given the size of the opportunities, the visibility opportunities, to pursue everything. Mm-hmm. And so you get into this classic dilemma of how do you, say yes and how do you say no to certain areas where you want to focus, especially when, again, we hope to be, the world's part of the, world's infrastructure for financial exchange. And so if you think about our exchange of values, if you think about that, why did I start there? Because, early days, you look at all the different protocols, they're all, really fighting for attention and trying to attract legitimate businesses and legitimate hefty projects. And so Algorand, I think we found a lot of gravitational pull in a bunch of areas, but I don't think we've done as, candidly, as good a job as we can back to the branding and saying, like, here's where we're planting a couple of stakes in the ground and placing our bets. And I think we've started to tip our hand slightly if people are watching, where it's, well, one theme that I think we're uniquely suited to focus on is the sort of bridging from Web 2 to Web 3. or Web 1 to Web 3, however you want to define Web 1 and Web 2 to Web 3, where we have a lot of you could look at the work that we're doing with a number of the partners I've mentioned before, with several governments. Banca d'Italia announced that they're leveraging Algorand's infrastructure. That came out a couple of weeks ago. The government of Nigeria, and so you start saying, wow, I think we're uniquely suited because of the fact that the tech is performant, it's secure, it increases, it doesn't decrease the expectations or the user's experience. And if you follow that logic, I think we're uniquely positioned to be that bridge, especially when you start talking about DeFi, where if you just look at the total value locked, you go to DeFi Llama and look it all up. I mean, there are banks in the world that if they just started issuing mortgages or asset-backed securities, it would start to dwarf the TVL. I mean, we're so early that I think that Algorand as a second area of focus, really DeFi has always been talked about, but in particular, I think it's credible DeFi. It's bringing the traditional financial institutions to Web3. So again, that bridge touches there, and we also know that and the sort of public review of public discussion around Napster, we see the creator economy as ripe in certain places for disruption, and we certainly see music as center of that target. And if you think about it, we think we're again uniquely positioned to help really dive in that. So if you think bridging as a theme across the board, Web 2 to Web 3, with a focus on DeFi and a focus in sort of the creator economy, I see us being really players in that space.
Yeah. Well, you look at a lot of different chains, a lot of different, all of them out there, and then you compare it to Algorand. It seems silly to me that not more people are looking at this, because there actually are real things happening at Algorand. You talked about it, Nigeria, the bank in Italy, El Salvador. There's a lot of these kind of huge things happening, and Algorand's actually creating value and doing things. Another topic from a long time, people have been talking about CBDCs on Algorand for forever, since the beginning of me paying attention. That there was a time when there was no DeFi and it was just speculation on CBDCs, and it wasn't even that long ago. The progress is pretty incredible. But maybe just on a general note, I'm not being like, oh, is Brazil putting their CBDC on Algorand? But what are your thoughts about CBDCs and their kind of position, compared to possibly like USDC and all of that? Do you have a opinion?
I'm going to probably give you a less satisfying answer than you'd want, but I'll try to at least give how I think about it.
Okay.
One thing, again, that I know people do know this, so I'm not saying it in a way to say that's a big, I've cracked the atom here, but we know, governments and politics globally are complicated and ever-changing things. And so, there are moments when governments can act very quickly and decisively and help and be innovative. But I don't think anyone, if you said, give me a list of the most innovative, organizations that I can't imagine government would be in the top 10. And that's not a put down, it's just a fact, right? So it's not really the point. And so why do I say that? Because when you start to engage with countries, it's not as if let's say someone came and said, well, we want to launch a CBDC and, we'd like to work with Algorand, and all of a sudden it's just, as soon as Algorand builds it, it's ready to go. Like, that's not how it works. And in fact, projects start, they stop, they evolve, they move to different things. And so my perspective on CBDCs are at some point they'll come. And, I think that if you told me when, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, maybe there'll be someone who really steps in and takes the lead. You could argue that El Salvador's position of Bitcoin being a currency there, maybe they'll launch their own currency, but there are movements of digital asset usage and adoption that is really starting first. And that's what I think you're seeing in like El Salvador. That's what you're seeing in Nigeria. That's what you're seeing in Italy. That's what you're seeing around the world. And we think that's a good sign of forward progress towards maybe a future where there are CBDCs. But again, these things happen at the pace of the government or nation that is interested.
Right.
Not necessarily at the pace of the technology.
Exactly. Okay. And then I guess I'll ask this question. Algorand says that they've solved the trilemma, right? And there's just one thing that people bring up. And when they talk about decentralization and the relay nodes, right? So what is your, I'm sure that those could be less permissioned and that's the track. But what's your kind of rebuttal to people saying, well, Algorand's not truly decentralized?
I just don't think people are doing their research. I mean, right. There's thousands of nodes. There's, Algorand itself, and we've been publicly committed that, we'll never have, more than 50% of the net. And there's no way for us to, first of all, we wouldn't be mathematically anyway, but at the end of the day, we don't take a primary position. And by the way, because it's permissionless and it's so easy to run these, I mean, anyone can run a node. There's nothing right. that's getting in the way of that. So I do think that, and by the way, we're committed to continuing that process. I think ideally there's more and more people that participate. And, I believe we're highly decentralized, to be honest with you. And we feel pretty comfortable with, but by the way, with the trajectory that we're on there too.
Cool. Now, this is going to be a tough one, and I apologize for asking this, all right?
Uh-oh.
But this is, you dropped a bomb on the community, and it's a few days ago. And I don't even know if you realized it, and maybe I missed the explanation of this, but you posted a hawk as your profile picture and said it was from Algorand. Now, what is going on there?
I said it's a bit, so, I have a number of NFTs. It's just a long thing about a hawk, and I had conversations with people about this, and the Algorand folks were kind enough to say, in honor of the new job, we wanted to create this for you. And of course, the hawk, I was asked by Kelly Callahan, of all people today, why is it green? Well, it's green because Algorand's green. And I'm like, didn't you run marketing at Algorand for a while? It was one of those things, but I was giving him a hard time. But anyway, that's the story. That's the story.
And, so you love a good hawk, and they're celebrating your promotion.
The hawk is great, and they said that they'd send it over, and they were very gracious to do that. And so right. I put it as the Twitter picture.
Nice. I like it. So this is, and if you haven't you can't tell, I'm transitioning to the hardball section of the interview. Another thing that I heard today, and I think it was in the spaces today, and I think you got cut off. Michael Arrington was talking to you, and then you weren't able to respond. So I want to give you, your opportunity to respond to him. Now, I believe what he had said was, which I had no idea. So you're a professional like this. You're a very serious pickleball player. Is this true?
Okay, so here's the thing. I really enjoy playing pickleball. And I told him, we were chatting backstage, I don't know how long ago, a year ago. And I shared that with him. And he then proceeded to start to tell people that I was a professional pickleball player. Now, I would say that I may, like, if, I show up and I'm playing against someone, I feel like I could hold my own and do just fine. And I might win a little money, maybe a little ringer action, but I would say that, but look, he just loves to make that statement. And I think he even said it like, this is the thing we always do. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, professional pickleball player. I think I could beat Michael Arrington, though. I will tell you that.
I'm going to put my money on you there, especially since you're a pro. And I think his question was, how do you continue, your pickleball career and run Algorand? So I guess you can handle it.
I will say this, that there was a area of our home that the kids used quite a lot when they were playing sports growing up. And let's just say that it's been adapted for another purpose. Yeah. So I get a fair bit of practice in right nearby.
Nice. Okay. So you're You don't have to travel far. I will
Yeah.
say about pickleball, the tennis courts across the street from my house have been completely taken over by pickleball. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of an intense. This sport is growing. I'd heard of pickleball, but now it's like this is
It's
the thing.
I love that we're talking about this, but I would just say this: like, it's the fastest growing sport in North America at this point.
Yeah.
And if someone in here is like a council person for a town that has all these tennis courts that aren't used, turn them into pickle courts; they will be full.
Yeah,
And it's a situation where it's just a fun game. It's great exercise, and the thing about it, not that you really care, Cooper, but the thing about it is that, a lot of sports, like if you're going to try to play ice hockey, you don't know how to skate. Like you got to really want to learn, right? I mean, it's going to take a while and you're going to feel horrible for a while. Pickle, you kind of get out there and you can hit the ball. And now to get good, you got to really play a lot, but people don't feel incompetent. And so it's a pretty appealing thing. And by the way, I think the average age is like under 30 now. I mean, it's all these former tennis players that are coming in and kicking the old people out like me.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I do care, and I like that point of like that's such a nice thing that you don't feel incompetent when you start playing. And by the way, this is kind of a rough transition, but I do notice that Algorand and Algorand DeFi specifically is a lot of people's first experience with DeFi, and I feel like it's actually it's user friendly and it's fast, and then I feel like when people come, they are like, whoa, Jesus, like everything moves quick. It's practically free. If you're moving around things, like it never costs you a bunch of money, a bunch of gas. It's it's obviously the place to be.
Well, I mean, it's not that rough of a transition. The way I would say it is that there's room for continued user experience improvements across blockchain and in general. I mean, by the way, the amount of innovation on that front since 4.5 years ago is crazy. Like what you had to go through in 2018, 2017 was insane. So I would say that plenty of room there. And I agree. I mean, we want to make things easy for people and give people tools so that they feel like they understand it and they can do great things with it.
Yeah. And I think something that I hear a lot from the people I talk to is that one of the main goals is for people to be using blockchain technology and not even know about it. Right.
Yeah, I've said that a bunch. That's a very wise statement. Very wise.
I think it's good. And on one more point, I was in a Twitter Spaces recently, and Autumn from the foundation, there was like a back and forth about some opinions on, how you bring more people to Algorand. And she was like, well, of course. And, convincing maybe a Solana maxi over isn't the easiest thing. But one of the things that the foundation wants to do, and I'm sure Algorand in general, is to bring these people that really, don't even know anything about NFTs and stuff, and then bring those people in, because there's a lot more people in the world that don't have any kind of, footprint on blockchain, and there's, could be onboarded.
Well, right. But I would say that there's a one-to-many strategy that I think we've pretty explicitly followed. And again, if you think about FIFA or you think about Napster, these are one-to-many. Like there are financial institutions with millions of users. You could do one implementation and you've added 1 million, people to your environment. So I think going on a onesie twosie basis and, digging trenches and then hoping to gain ground, is not the way to go here. The real mass adoption is going to be with the technology that people trust and that is driven by innovative thinkers in traditional businesses that want to bridge into the Web3 space. Full stop.
Full stop. And, something that is really compelling that's happening over at the foundation as well is this ACE program. And, all of these different universities and Algorand kind of getting in there and kind of helping kind of grow the next generation of native blockchain developers. And I mean, Stacey's done
great. Stacey's done great. And it's great to see what they're doing over there and how they're, running their operation. I think it's super helpful to the community broadly.
Yeah. And does Inc. and the foundation, do you guys work closely together, or you have a good, not at all, pretty separate?
No, we have a good relationship. I mean, we provided the technology and we continue to innovate on it. And, we're a tech company, but, we're clearly a key part of the Algorand ecosystem, and so are they. But no, I think Stacey's great. I'll see Stacey. We interact every once in a while, and I think she's doing a great job.
Sweet. All right. Final question. You have a friend. His name is Anthony Scaramucci, and he is he's often touting your beauty secrets. Now, I mean, we got to end this with what are these beauty secrets, and then maybe on a more serious note, how you see Anthony, you know, helping this go forward and Skybridge and that relationship over at Nax, the Nax group and stuff like that. But first, the beauty secrets.
Yeah. Well, no, he says health and beauty. He threw beauty in as a joke because, I mean, everyone that's watching this can see that the beauty part is really is like being called Little John, you know, in the Robin Hood novels. I would say that the health thing is exercise a bunch, and you just, you know, food is medicine, and read the labels. You know, if it says like healthy, it probably isn't. You know, healthy Cheez-It is not a good thing. So it's you just have to be really focused and take ownership over what you put into your body, and then make sure you get some exercise. It's really not that hard, but you know, that's it. And by the way, Scaramucci went on my diet, and he did very well. He still talks about it. So that's a trademark it.
So your diet is probably you're cutting out a lot of processed food.
It's not just that, but it's a keto paleo hybrid. Like I cut dairy, it's low inflammation, high fat, and protein, whatever. But it has to be. You got to look at the ingredients. Like even power bars, there's hundreds of them, and there's maybe only like 5 that are even worth as a cheat having. Otherwise, you're just eating sugar and junk. So that's it. You know, like I'm just trying to stay in shape and pickle shape. I need to stay.
You got to stay in your pickle shape.
Pickle shape.
And then just with, I mean, are you a longtime friend of Anthony Scaramucci?
Longer than 11 days. If he sees that, that's fantastic. But he's people will get that reference. But I would say that, we met as a part of my being at Algorand, and we hit it off, and you know, he's been a big supporter, and he chose to, like, this is what he wanted to participate, and we just hit it off. You know, I think he's a straight shooter, and you know, he certainly helps with you know, when you talk about marketing, he's done some nice things, and that's it.
That's it. And he was kind enough to come on my show, and so were you. And so thank you so much, Sean. And I'm looking forward to seeing it. Hopefully see you in Decipher. We can meet in person, and it'll be great.
I would love that, Cooper. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.